Our first hymn is in the exact mood you're in right now, which is 123, Spirit of Life. If you want to grab it from your hymnals, or you might have memorized, the quartet will join us. Please rise in body or in spirit. Special. Please be seated. That's great.
Out of wood and stone, out of dream and sacrifice, the people built a home, this one. Out of the work of many hands and hearts and minds, the people fashioned a symbol and a reality. This house has truly been a place of meeting in warmth and in joy and in openness, meeting in courage and in love and in trust. Tonight, we celebrate just how this has been. Welcome to this space of loving remembrance.
I came inside this building in 1972 at the tender age of 33 and a half. It's been a wonderful experience all the way through. I've hung in there the entire time for you people I see out there. I knew back then, but I haven't seen you a whole lot since. This quartet started 25 years later in 1997. We've been going for 21 years.
Try to remember the kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. Try to remember the kind of September when grass was green and grain was yellow. Try to remember the kind of September when you were a tender and callow fellow. Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow, 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 follow. Ooh, ah. how tender that love was an ember about to billow. Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow. Follow, follow, follow.
That's how it is when you get old. They don't pay attention. Well, I'm happy to be here to opportunity to participate in this sharing of memories event. And this congregation and this building has been the family's spiritual home for 50 plus years. And like many others, like many members of this congregation, we experienced the moving to a new location with mixed emotions. Some of people here, I suppose, say good riddance, and others leave or change with mixed feelings. Lucia and I have, because of our age, we have not been as active as we might have been otherwise. There are some limitations when you get to be 97 years old or 90 plus years old. But here we are. And I didn't ask for applause. I want condolences or something. Okay. Anyhow, I'm going to close this up because this is a bunch of junk that I wrote. and I'm going to wing it from now. Some of you are probably wondering, how did this all happen? How did this building come to be? And why is it what it is? Well, one of the reasons it's a good architect who we have with us. We'll talk about that in just a minute. That comes back to, I have to take you back to the Unitarian congregation of the late 50s and early 60s, when there were about 250 or 300 people gathering to have service together as a congregation. And we didn't belong to, Lucia and I didn't belong to any organized religious congregation or group, but when our daughter got 5 years old and asked us, why don't I go to Sunday school like my friends do? We decided we better look around and see how we can solve this problem. And I had, over the years, I'd heard about the Unitarians in Atlanta. There was a congregation called the United Liberal Church. That sounded pretty good. So Lucia and I went looking for the United Liberal Church. We found the address on Boulevard. We took off looking for Boulevard. We found Boulevard, but we kept on going south on Boulevard. And the further we went, the more we questioned, well, where is this place? What kind of a place is it? Finally, we got south of North Avenue, and it was kind of a mixed bag. It was a pretty seedy neighborhood, or it was in transition court. That's a good word for it. So in we went, and we found this place, and we sat down, expecting a minister to appear. Oh, we were welcomed. But there was no minister, because the minister had quit about 8 months ago. So a very well-spoken lady came to the pulpit, and her name was Dr. Senile moments. Dr. Upjohn, I think it was. And she gave a very good talk. And people responded and talked back and forth. So afterwards, we met with people, and some of the people we met that evening became good friends of mine. And some of them still are, like Alice Young, and a few other people around here who I haven't seen in quite some time. I'm delighted you could come, Alice. And we were wondering, there was no building, and the building was really bad. The building was bad. The Sunday school was down in the basement, and it was a basement. It was not a lower level. It was a basement. The staff consisted, there was no minister, but there was a secretary who was to be the secretary to the new minister, and a director of education, Hoffman. She was a very able woman. And we talked to the people, they were very interesting and welcoming, and we kept coming back. And they told us after a few sessions that the building they were considering moving. And also a minister had been selected, and he was expected to come for a final interview, and that was Eugene Pickett. And we signed up to become members on the day Eugene Pickett gave his first sermon. And we enjoyed Eugene Pickett for a long time. Well, this building came about with the effort of a small congregation who formed a building committee headed by Harry Adley, who was a city planner. But at this point, I want to say Tom Van Gillette was the real designer for this building. He was in John Misano's firm, but he did it. But Harry Adley and a very small, very intelligent people put together a program for this building. They researched it thoroughly, and the priorities were slightly different from what they are now. This was a small group, little money. What shall we do? The building around us is crumbling, it's falling down. We got to do something. The building committee searched. They could not come up with a location with an existing building that would really meet the requirements or the desires, and the emotional needs of that congregation. Nothing. But they said, okay, I think we can make it, we can swing it, we can build a building. Well, that's a big surprise, and we were delighted. They went through an intensive search, interviews with architects to find the firm and the people who really could understand what Unitarianism was all about, and how we were functioning, how the congregation wanted to function, and to find a man who could translate this kind of a program, these requirements, which were fairly unique and not quite traditional church-like, into a building, and this is the result. So there were lots of details. Of course, there was much come and go and much difference. But Joe was a good man, and he was lucky to have the assistance of an able person like Tom, my good friend Tom Van Gillette, who is now retired as the head of a large international renowned architectural firm. He has changed, as we all have. I remember discussions with the building committee, and I was pleased to recognize that they really, really understood that, well, something like the old saying by Winston Churchill, we build our buildings, thereafter we shape our buildings, and thereafter the buildings shape us. There is this strong interaction between people and buildings, and this is what this place represents. As we went along, I became a member of the board in about 1968 or 69, I'm not sure. I had the honor of being elected president of the congregation, which was a great honor indeed, and we were struggling. But the building opened with the congregation was just extremely enthusiastic when they walked into this place. I just remember the glow and the thrill of the people who came into this space. It was lovely. You came in through this door, you found this beautiful arena-shaped place, and it was bright. We had red seats, and they were delightful. They were very important because it sort of explains the spirit, a sort of dignified spirit that was reflected in the environment. And people loved it. And you could sit across from each other and see each other and talk and be together. And it was just wonderful. And still, there was one minister, Eugene Pickett, a secretary, and a director of education. Within 2 or 3 years, we better than doubled the membership. It became so big, unwieldy. It was too big for this church. And about the time I was president, I can't remember exactly, this congregation leadership urged the formation of another church. And this is how Northwest was born, because we just couldn't handle the crowd anymore. So it worked out beautifully. What specific memories I have? Well, there was one memory that I'll never forget. Gene Pickett sort of brought the arts into this service. He expanded from the intellectual approach that Ed Cahill had before him into a more human and artistic approach. He brought in the arts, he brought in music, he brought in drama, he brought in poetry, he brought in dance, and all this was woven into the service that he presented. And one of the services particularly I remember, because there was my daughter, she was 13 years old, and 3 brothers, one 11, one 9, and one 6. And they sat right there and played a chamber music quartet, which was marvelous. And I don't remember what the selection was. Christopher, who is here, do you remember? Well, he was 6 years old, and he played second violin, of course, because my daughter played first violin. She was 13. But now, Christopher is the first violinist with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. So things have changed. And one other thing that I want to mention before I get off here, Gene, that Lucia is an artist, a painter, and she was instrumental in starting our gallery, our fine arts gallery. She brought in. She has a good eye for painting, for talents, and she gave the first show to several people here in the Atlanta and Georgia area who have become internationally recognized painters, like Catherine Mitchell and Ben Smith and Joe Creasy and some of those people. And I certainly hope that the fine arts will be an important part of this congregation in its new location. When I was president, there was no assistant minister or anybody else. I sat there, and Eugene Pickett sat there, and we opened and closed the service jointly. And when we began the service, Don Schumacher played, he was the first cellist for the Atlanta Symphony, played a beautiful cello selection, and thereafter it went on. In the closing ceremonies, I was here, and Gene was there, and we had the closing hymn. And the words of the closing hymn will be my closing words. We shall be one in building for tomorrow. Thank you.
I've been asked to talk about this wonderful building that we have, which is over 50 years old. I was here at the groundbreaking. It was a very cold day. Eugene Pickett was the minister then. We had hot coffee for everybody.
I was here in January the 10th, 1965, when they dug the first shovelful to designate that this is where UUCA would be built. It was a wonderful celebration.
And I was here when they had it, stakes in the ground and strings where the building was going to be. It's like, you know, a full cycle of the building's lifetime.
It was not a typical church. It's not a nave, it's not pews, it's not a narthex, there's no altar. It all had to work together, and the idea of the circle within the square became a real answer. But I love the concept because if people would be in here, they could see each other. It's not like pews in a line where you're just looking at the back of somebody's head. You see each other's faces, and you nod, acknowledge that you're there.
Memorial gardens are not something you think about when you're 20 years old. It's something that comes much later, and then it becomes very important. We have long-term commitments there, obviously.
The creek for me is my space. There were days that rather than come into the service, I would go spend the hour at the creek doing my nature service, and I will miss the creek, absolutely.
There's a certain attraction to go into the underground, and you're coming down here for some element of surprise, for something special. It's something for us to be a part of that's not offered anywhere else in the building. And this is what makes this really a very special and a very sacred space.
I've grown to greatly appreciate the art gallery. You have to look at pictures when you go by. Change your idea about what art is for and what it's there for. Is it to entertain you, or is it be nice and pretty, or is it there to express something that can't be expressed any other ways?
As a developer, one of the first rules is don't fall in love with your real estate. It keeps you from making good business decisions. I think this was a very strong business decision for us, so it's time to move on.
I mean, I feel a real excitement about the new building, and I feel sadness at leaving this building, but it's going to be good to leave it. And I'd like to take a piece of it with me. I'd like to take a piece of the brick. Yeah.
I definitely want to say goodbye to the sanctuary, to the underground theater, to the youth room, and maybe to all of the classrooms that I can remember.
I would say goodbye to the entire building. Each section has something special about it. It's the whole combination that has made this such a special place.
I just trust that our next space is going to be even better than what we have currently. Goodbye, Cliff Valley Way. Goodbye.
So our first speaker was Bill Pulgram, who needs no introduction after that. And our next speaker is Nina West, another longtime member of UUCA. Hi, Nina.
Several months ago, I had a dream about our Cliff Valley building. In it, I had been teaching a yoga class. At the end of class, everyone was leaving the building, and I was suddenly thinking about the fact that soon this particular place would no longer be our congregational home. And I began telling the building that I loved it, that I had deeply loved it. I touched different parts. I held parts of doors between my hands, and I told the building how much I had loved it. In 1964 or 65, I met this building for the first time. I was about 7 years old. I was with my family, and I remember feeling joyful, and this is what I saw. I walk into the sanctuary through the openings at the front. They are just openings, no doors. I see some scraps of lumber lying on the concrete near the bottom of the stairs, right about there. My eyes have adjusted to the low light by the time I'm standing in the circle, this one. I look up and around and can see what to me look like giant gray concrete steps interspersed with smaller flights of stairs. I can see the walls around the top that define the outer edges of the upper part of the sanctuary. I look back toward the entrance and then down the ramp at the back. The contrasts are strong of light from either side and the relative darkness from the floor of the sanctuary. I look up and I see overhead the ceiling. A shaft of light from above illuminates dust I can see floating in the air, probably a combination of particles from sheetrock and powder from concrete. In spite of the hard surfaces that tend to reflect sound, there is a hush standing in this sanctuary. I feel enveloped in that, in the contrasts of light and dark, the coolness of the air. I have loved our building because it was not like any other building I had been in. Our building was a square and our sanctuary was round with beautiful, brightly colored cushions, red, not orange. Our pews had padded seats and backs were not hard like wooden pews I'd sat in elsewhere. At the top of each flight of stairs, there were dark wood posts with round globe lights, a variation on this theme of circle and square. Our sanctuary, by its architecture, embodied the idea that we were all part of a shared circle, that we were vibrant, that it was good to be comfortable, that it was possible to see, which mattered to me as a child since I was usually having to peer in between adults in order to see elsewhere. And as a short adult, it still matters to me. The sanctuary's roundness expressed a sacred idea, that of wholeness. I love to put a finger in one of the grooves between rows of bricks and walk the perimeter of our sanctuary, only interrupted by the doors because back then there were no areas like there are out here right now, built out from the outer wall. The roundness of our sanctuary was evident inside and out, and I felt the roundness with my hands. Over the years, this circle within a square, this mandala, this symbol for the universal whole has imprinted itself deeply on me. This sacred structure has contained most of my life. I remember my RE classes and teachers and the rooms those were in. I remember children's worship downstairs, the symbols of the major world religions painted on circular discs and mounted to the wall. I remember working in the office and taking care of children in the nursery. As a teen in LRY, I slept in just about every room and hallway in this place, including both closets back when there were two. Yes, I have even slept in the sanctuary. I've cooked in the kitchen and cleaned the carpets, painted the walls, and done all of these things with friends I made from near and far who are still part of my life. My friends and I played with the parachute, creating a great dome that we could run under here in the sanctuary, have worn ourselves out playing wink on the floor. You can ask me later what wink is. This is where I learned whatever leadership skills I have, where I also learned that adults valued me as a whole thinking person. My mother was ordained as a UU minister here. My husband and I were married here. My children were in the coming of age program and the youth group here. And here in this sanctuary, my family and friends said our goodbyes to my father after he died. I learned through the Tibetan sacred art of sand mandala painting to understand this building, this circle in a square, at an even deeper level. Seeing the construction of the sand mandala, I realized I had grown up living in that sacred space. And through the process of watching the sand mandala's construction and eventual destruction, I had a way of seeing, of understanding that everything comes to an end and begins again. I found a photo of a cup of bright yellow daffodils from the groundbreaking for this building, placed somewhere in the vicinity of the sanctuary. So too, a sand mandala begins with flowers at its center, and after it is ritually destroyed, flowers at the center close the process. Our congregation has been constructing mandalas through our collective presence and actions, and has been deconstructing them throughout our time in this place. We create a mandala every time we have a service in this sacred space. We disperse the mandala as we leave. But this particular container for our mandala is nearing its end, and so I return to the dream I mentioned at the beginning. I want to tell this building how much I love it. I want to hold every brick and door, every beam and window and wall, and tell this building how deeply I have loved this place and all the mandalas I've created in it, all the mandalas created by others, which I've been a part of. I want the land under us to know how much I have loved it too, and that I'm grateful for having it as the foundation of our home. I thank all the trees, the plants, the birds, and all the creatures that have shared our home. And I love and thank all the people whose spirit and ideas gave rise to this incarnation of our mandala, and to our architect, who had the capacity to listen and give shape to those ideas in this place, and in so doing have a profound effect on our congregation. And even if what follows us is only a parking lot, I hope our love, our presence here will bless it and somehow nurture all of those who will come and go. And we will take our flowers and begin again building a new mandala.
Taryn Strauss is going to read something in a moment, but I would like Tom Benchelet to stand, the architect. Let's acknowledge him and honor him. Thank you so much, sir.
If you were a newcomer, a visitor, or a congregant coming to Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta 60 years ago, at the beginning, when this building was built, this is the letter you received from Reverend Eugene Pickett. May I personally welcome you to our new church. I thought that an explanation of the architecture might provide a keener enjoyment of the church itself. And it is with that in mind that I greet you. The architectural design of the church did not just happen. It is the outgrowth of the joint efforts of our members and the architect, based on the program, history, and philosophy of this church. The use of the circle and the square reflects the use of basic forms as symbolically suggesting the basic search for truth. The circle of seating is an inclusive symbol in which the minister then becomes a part of the congregation. We needed a sanctuary that would encourage the physical dialogue that takes place each Sunday following the sermon, where the members could not only see the minister, but could also see each other. There was a firm conviction among the church members that the sanctuary itself should be designed with many purposes in mind as to its use. The church felt that the conventional sanctuary would limit the use to Sunday morning services or occupancy of about 2 hours per week of use. Members wanted the sanctuary designed for theater, lectures, music recitals, choral groups, for not only the church itself, but also for community use, and they wanted a church school of rather rigid requirements as to number and use of classrooms. Budget restrictions dictated the actual size of the church, but not the program. The church was also concerned with the aesthetics of the building, lacking the traditional symbolism found in most churches. The members wanted a church that would, in effect, be a statement of the members' continuing dialogue in their search for truth. We felt that the newcomers to Atlanta would be drawn to the church because of its architecture. We also felt that the architecture was important since this is the only Unitarian church in the whole area. The Atlanta Unitarian Universalist Church is church school oriented, so the first problem to be solved was that of providing adequate, workable, and flexible space for the young people. It is our hope that our church will become not only a church home for our members and our friends, but that it will make a real contribution to the community at large, a meeting place for the concerned and committed people of our community who recognize our common goals and responsibility is to our community. Eugene Pickett, Minister.
That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly bluebirds fly above the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't I? Why can't I?
Is Ayanna Kafi Stringer.
Of the many spot-on things that UUs have told me about myself, my favorite is that I'm reserved. That's why I paused before accepting the opportunity to speak to you about my experiences. I am, however, a writer as well as an extremely nostalgic person. Memories are fascinating in the way that they bend to fit the purpose of the recollection. The story of meeting a high school sweetheart being recalled in the context of the simplicity of a 17-year-old's heart is a very different story than of connecting with a boy in a building that may never house the budding of another love in that significantly older heart. Discovering old pockets of emotion in preparation to speak has made this past few weeks a little strange and pretty energetically charged. I'm comforted in knowing that I'm not alone in that. I hated coming here in the beginning. My family belonged to a tiny church called Thurmanhamer Ellington, or THE. Everyone knew me, and I was allowed to play during the sermon. Here, everyone was a stranger. We met first thing in the morning instead of mid-afternoon. I had to sit quietly while this imposing room was commanded by intellectuals that I couldn't keep up with. The skylight became my constant companion. I stared and imagined through at least a year's worth of services. The most powerful Cliff Valley Way image that I have is of our star hanging under the skylight, sharp in my recollection from years of visual reinforcement. When I first started YRUU, we were in the basement. My parents would walk me to the stairwell doors and I would descend on my own, forgoing the service to be with UUs of my own age. In our room, there was a complete brick wall. Seemingly everyone had been allowed their own brick to do with what they wanted. They used paint, Sharpie, and glitter to immortalize themselves in the very flesh of this building. The last high school class allowed to decorate their own bricks were freshmen when I was in 8th grade. I know, right? I spent 2 years quietly staring at that wall while confident, boisterous, immortal upperclassmen ran the RE and YRUU discussions. At 17, a few years of leadership training in, and after some gentle nurturing from my various UU communities, I became the social action coordinator for the Mid-South District's Youth Adult Committee. The position allowed me to host a standalone youth conference that I called Connect and Resurrect. Since the days of LRY, our Cliff Valley Way doors had been closed to hosting outside youth. I felt so strongly about this building being the right space for my event that I created my very first project proposal and submitted it to the senior staff. Bless them, because executing that youth conference in this building, fresh from renovations, changed my life. I spent months learning how to plan an event from scratch, pulling advice from my parents and various community members. There was no reason for this community to allow me time, space, and creative freedom, other than the fact that this is what we do for each other. We support. The final product was what I still consider to be my first real masterpiece. Our spiritual home housed at least 100 youth and advisors from churches reaching all over the district. During the days, we had workshops spread throughout the building, ranging from how to organize social justice groups at school to extreme self-care. The renovations offered us space for 4 sleeping rooms and 2 awake rooms, 1 quiet and 1 dubbed the rave room. It had music constantly playing and was lit by both black and twinkle lights. By the end of the weekend, I had found my voice, found my place, and found a clear way to use my talents. I threw myself into the work of youth organizing. On Sunday, May 16th, 2004, I skipped my high school graduation. I reasoned that it was my birthday and I could do whatever I wanted. So I came to church, where I could wear my Converses and jeans to service without being looked at sideways. That morning, I stood up here and received the Reinman Prize. That morning solidified that I always have a home here. This is a place that I can be myself, and it's not only okay, but praised. In 2011, I believe, I taught a hoop dance class series in the social hall. The final class was a flow jam, where we would integrate all of the skills that we had learned. We dressed up, brought props like fans, scarves, and crazy shoes, and experimented with manipulating them while dancing in the hoops. I timed my playlist so that Cracks by Freestylers played as the sun went down. It's an EDM song, so the lyrics are simple and message profound. It goes, "Leave the past behind and walk away. When it's over and the heart breaks and the cracks begin to show." The sun was setting, and I watched it through our social hall windows from inside my hoop. The stories that live in this building are too numerous to tell. There are past versions of ourselves who are walking through these halls with no idea that anything could ever change. There are future versions of ourselves who can't imagine a life without this move. There are recent versions of ourselves sitting with breaking hearts who might need hands to hold in order to move forward. But we're all together, a congregation. Thank you for being my extended family. Thank you for teaching me that a congregation isn't a place, but a community. Thank you for always holding space for me, and thank you for bearing witness to my life within the safety of these walls.
We got to the parking lot and these bumper stickers, all these wonderful bumper stickers.
We found people who are just the truest people we've ever met. They're so true.
And I want to make sure that for both our kids that the sky was the limit for both of them. And I want them to grow up in a environment where equality was for all, not for a certain gender.
And you like to have smiling on your face came out from your heart. And this is why you make me so excited to come every Sunday.
The sanctuary was what I would consider my spiritual home in this building. There's just something that's really warm about a circle. It's almost like a hug made of people.
What impressed me the most was the fact that the decor is the people. That when you're in there, Rather than looking at artifacts on the wall or a picture of a deity, you're looking across and you're seeing people.
The story is that our congregation has stadium seating because UUs like to look down on their ministers. So I'm also mindful that I'm being looked down upon. Which I don't take as a negative. I take it as meaning that I'm being looked at not as someone who's exalted when I'm in the pulpit, but as someone who is emerging from the congregation and for a short period of time has the privilege of being in a speaking role.
When we were renovating and all of the sanctuary was empty, no carpeting, no seats, bare. And I went in there and I sang for about a half an hour because the acoustics were just incredible.
Standing in the center of your audience, of the congregation, and sharing music, there's just something, I don't know, kind of magical about that.
Being a member of the Phoenix Choir has given me an opportunity to sing with a lot of wonderful folks and sing some really wonderful music.
I loved standing next to people who could read music better than I could and had good voices.
One of my favorite memories of the sanctuary is Moravian Love Feast. That circular space lit by candles with the Christmas decorations circling the space. It's just a nice, warm, whole experience that I will miss.
The sanctuary, I think that's the most special part of the building to me. I was married in the sanctuary in 1967.
Different kinds of memories that I really, really hold dear to my heart. And one of those is my son's wedding, which I presided over as a lay minister at that time.
I got married here on June 15th, 2003. We had 3 UU ministers officiate our wedding.
My husband and I got married here right after the Supreme Court okayed that, and we were one of 5 couples that were married in that ceremony.
When I stepped into the church the first time in June of '72, I also was highly impressed with the social room.
Just a great place to be. Food, companionship, a lot of interaction.
Wonderful Wednesdays, I think, are a great tradition. I'm here almost every week.
The parlor is, I think, my favorite room in the building. I was on the team that created this out of one of the ugliest classrooms you've ever seen.
The thing I love about this building is that when I walk in the front entrance, I feel both uplifted and welcomed at the same time.
The original building, a square with a circle in it, is a kind of mandala.
One year, Geraldine and I picked apples off the apple tree in the front and made apple jelly. And then from the leftovers, we made apple butter.
My memories of this building, I think, mostly revolve around raising my daughter here.
I remember when we had a couple of lock-ins and we did sleepovers in the sanctuary.
And I have great memories of the New Year's Eve parties we had a couple years in a row. My daughter was about 5 and 6 years old.
They would play in the coat closet, and then Geraldine Lowry would drag them back to us and tell us to keep better track of our kids, and then they'd go back and they'd play in the coat closet again.
I broke my arm on the playground.
Probably my proudest memory in general is hosting a youth conference here. It was a district con, and I was the social justice coordinator. It was very exciting.
The most thing I probably remember was like the ramp being built for AJ in the playground.
When we had AJ, our son, who was in a wheelchair, one of the things that we did for the RE classes is we took the children around in a wheelchair themselves, and they got to experience the building as it was at that time from the viewpoint of a wheelchair.
We moved here 8 years ago, and the people are what I care about.
I enjoy the friendship of the fellow members of the congregation.
I know with me it's about the people. I did my first pride parade here. I've met so many people that I consider lifelong friends.
My hopes and dreams for the new building are that
we will take everything that we love about this place and use it as really a launching point to create even more beautiful memories there.
It really doesn't matter to me where we are. We're not leaving the community.
I feel strongly about the development of the community for all.
I'm not going to necessarily look back wistfully. I'm going to look forward hopefully. And part of that hope is built upon all the experiences that have made this a special place and that will, I think, guide us in making our new location equally special.
Do we really have to say goodbye to the donuts? I'm just saying. All right, I'm hearing it. Executive decision. Donuts forever. Wherever we go, donuts will go. Edward de Bono writes, "A memory is what is left when something happens and does not completely unhappen." Tonight we are witnessing to the truth of this. So many things have happened within these walls since they were raised and the congregation moved in 1966. And they are things that can never completely unhappen, even when this building no longer exists. Like what happened to Anne Levine. She was married at UUCA on June 17th, 1967, to the late Arnold Jules Levine, who died in 1990. Anne says, "When my fiancé Arnold and I were talking about our marriage, I was distressed because he was Jewish and I was Presbyterian and no clergy wanted to perform the ceremony. I didn't want to be married by a rabbi anyway or a justice of the peace. Before our engagement, I had gone to talk to the Emory campus Presbyterian minister who was a friend of Arnold's, and I was worried about how this marriage could work with our different religions. I had no interest in converting to Judaism, and Arnold, a New York Jew, would not have been able to successfully pull off being a Presbyterian, no matter how hard he tried. Arnold, whose uncle and aunt, a Jewish Catholic union, had become UUs in Columbus, Ohio, years before, suggested we go visit UUCA and then talk to the minister, Eugene Pickett. I agreed. I felt pretty comfortable about our first visit there, so we pursued it and made an appointment with Pickett. He was very warm and welcoming. When we asked if he could perform a marriage ceremony, he said, of course. So we started making plans. Arnold's family was so relieved that at the age of 36, he was finally getting married. But my mom in North Carolina was not so happy. She realized, though, that she had everything to lose, me, if she opposed the marriage. So she began helping with the plans for our wedding in Atlanta. We had a big fight when she was preparing the wedding invitation, and she wanted that invite to say Unitarian Universalist Church of Atlanta. Arnold replied that if it said church, his relatives would not come, he would not come. I said we were calling it what it really was named, congregation. So on a hot day in June of 1967, no air conditioning in the sanctuary then. Seriously, there's some real pain being expressed over here. That June of 67, we got married. Arnold had gone out and rented big fans to be put up at the top of the sanctuary with all the trimmings, long white dress and veil, 3 bridesmaids, all the families in attendance. We had a wonderful wedding followed by the reception in the social hall. That happened to Anne here, and it will never unhappen. So many of you, in reaching out with your stories, mentioned marriage in this building as a memory that will stay with you forever. But you shared so many other kinds of stories of like-minded people meeting and beautiful friendships forming. The building creates the space, and we, the people, provide the rest. We heard a quote from earlier. We shape our buildings, the buildings shape us, right? For example, it's Carol Galanti sharing the story of how she met the Reverend Marty Griffith in 1990. I am truly grateful for Marty's vision, says Carol. She was instrumental in getting together several UUCA members of the Jewish faith to form the L'chaim group back in 1990, or 1993. The five of us had never met each other before. We went to organize services in 1994 for Passover and later for the High Holy Days, as well as to participate in religious education and exploration activities. And the rest is history. The L'chaim group, the celebrations group, is one of the jewels of our UU crown. But it all started with having dedicated space for meetings to happen, and the people provided the rest. We absolutely do all know the congregation is not the building. We know this. David Ellwanger and Marty Wilson acknowledge this when they say, we will miss the old building, but its physical space will be something else dedicated to healing and love, and there is nothing more fitting than that. UUCA is not the building. It is the members of the congregation that make it so. Yes. But architecture does matter. It determines to a great extent how people interact. It structures relationships. It structures worship, for sure. And so David and Marty remember a service from the mid-1980s. And in the center of the sanctuary was a single chair. The Reverend Terry Sweetser, senior minister at the time, was addressing the spirit of Jerry Falwell, who would have been sitting in that chair had he accepted our minister's invitation. Of course, we'd have someone else in that chair if it was today, right? David and Marty continue their story. The UU minister passionately challenged some of the values espoused by this conservative right leader, and the congregation gave him a standing ovation at the end of the sermon. Now, this is my kind of church, I said to myself. And that's their story. And this is indeed our kind of church, our kind of congregation. All that has happened will never unhappen. This place, where you get to the parking lot and marvel at all the bumper stickers, which are just like the ones in your car, the ones that you want to have in your car. This place, where you walk in and feel uplifted and welcome. This place, where the seats used to look like this. Original. I think this looks orange. I'm sorry. Like this. This place, where apple trees grow, and you and friends create apple jelly, and then apple butter, and then anything else apple-y that you can make. I don't know. This place where the Eggman has eggs for you. This place where we learned leadership skills, and we learned relationship skills, and we learned ourselves. We learned ourselves. We learned what our place was. This place where Joe Reynolds in Love is Love Farm has sustainably grown food for you. Dana Boyle says his business has not only provided CSA shares of sustainably grown food to interested UUCA members for 10 plus years, now in its 11th year, but he has also donated generously to our congregation in so many ways. He has been a true friend, a special partner in our attempts to uphold the principle of caring for the earth and the interdependent web in which we live, in which we are a part. And we look forward to a continued relationship with Joe, and hopefully the Eggman too. Come with us. Just the most interesting people are found within these walls. It's where you or your children played in the coat closet. It's where the sanctuary feels like a big hug. It's where Enos Hoster watched her middle granddaughter at age 3 flying down as a little angel during the Christmas pageant. She seated herself next to baby Jesus to look at the baby and stayed there motionless for the rest of the play that will never unhappen. Where on Easter Sunday, the flower celebration arrangement at the center of our sanctuary is colorful and vibrant with so many different flowers, and then each person takes a flower as they exit, and this is how they are reminded that they have inherent worth and dignity as a person. This place where caring community is found. Emma Lou Bales says, almost exactly 5 years ago, I had head surgery at Emory Hospital. Having had chronic headaches for many months and experiencing memory issues from time to time, I had a simple seizure when I was teaching a class in Denver, Colorado. This experience told me that it was important for the medical team to look inside my head. The MRI exposed a tumor behind my left eye, and surgery was scheduled for May of 2013. I asked for community support from UUCA, and it was given to me. Friends there coordinated and brought food to our home on a daily basis for about 2 months after the surgery. I remember my sister in Birmingham, Alabama, feeling that she had to come to my household to take care of me throughout the surgery. But before it occurred, I told her, Warren, I have created a strong community at UUCA. I feel that my friends there are my family members. I am confident that I will be taken care of through this event. And she was. She says, the entire experience gave me a full commitment to my relationships at UUCA other than an environment for Gerald to demonstrate his singing talent. Where is he? There he is. She says, UUCA has provided me and Gerald a real feeling of family with our friends. That's Emma Lou's story. We are so grateful for this space where loving care happened for her, and that will never ever unhappen. That's right. Loving space for all of us. So many more stories to tell, for sure. We look forward to a new chapter in our life as a congregation, in a new space. But for now, we are grateful to these bricks. We are grateful to these walls. We are grateful to the ceiling, to all of it, to say, I love you, I love you. Grateful and grieving and grateful. It's those words from a Mary Oliver poem called In Blackwater Woods that come to mind, where she says, to live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and then, when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Tonight we are holding this place against our bones. When it is absolutely time to do so, we will let it go. But not tonight. Amen.
Reverend Makar, Reverend Strauss, and I had a chance to do a kind of goodbye service with the youth about a few weeks ago. And I told them that I started working when I was 15, stocking shelves somewhere, and then 9 years later, about 5 days and 10 years ago, Reverend Makar called me and offered me a job here at UUCA. And I've worked more than half of my working life here in this building. And thanks. And the exciting thing is that since my first week here, they were like, oh, we should move. Right? that this building, that our congregation had outgrown this fantastic space. And so I've been living in this space with this hey, there's another space for us. There's another place for this community to keep going since my first week here. And it's very special that we've been in this process. Amen from the universe. Thank you, Dave. And and as everyone has said, this UUCA is not this space, it is this people, this group. Let us stand, rise in body or in spirit, and sing number 318 in your hymnal, We Would Be One, which closed services here for decades. Come on up.
Please be seated. A couple of announcements before we rise for our benediction. So after this service, we invite you to go into the social hall. DJ G. Pook is going to play some awesome tunes. There's going to be dancing in there. In the library, there will be a harpist, Susan Ottson. So that's kind of an alternate music possibility. And in the chapel will be an Irish band. Since that is the chapel and we are Unitarians, the Irish band goes in the chapel. So there you go. So some options for you after this service. As you leave from this place, feel free to light a candle of remembrance if you wish to do so. We have a couple tea lights that are not lit yet, and if you wish to add to that, please feel free to do that. I want to thank a couple of people before we move on and into our party mode. Kay Johnson, celebrations team lead. Whoa! Yeah, great. A lot of folks have been working with Kay and making this evening happen and making subsequent events happen. But Kay, you're really taking a lead with this. And when we first started talking about this, you said, I've never done something like this before. And I love the way Kay this is a learning opportunity for her. I just love that. And that's so much of what happens when we are in congregations. We learn new things. And I just love the way you're stretching yourself. It's just beautiful. So thank you so much for your leadership, and I love it. I want to thank Doug Abel. Where's Doug? There's Doug. So Doug is leading the great UUCA poster show. All those posters in the social hall, take a look at those. What richness, beautiful pictures, except the ones I'm in. I'm going to get you guys. But anyway, beautiful. Thank you so much for your leadership there. Show him some love. Beautiful. Now, how many of you are going, whoa, look at those flowers? That's Shirley Kendrick. Shirley Kendrick has put flowers all over our space. Where's Shirley? Is Shirley here? Where's Shirley? We love you, Shirley. Oh, well, there she is. Whoa, beautiful Shirley. Thank you. So many hands, so many hearts making these sorts of events happen. Thank you so much, everyone involved in this. And now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our benediction. As is our habit, please hold arms, hold hands as you will. I'd like everyone to say this with me. This is the home that love made. This is the home that love made. That's going to be our refrain for the benediction this evening. When I point to you, you'll say that refrain. Do it again. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love that the founders felt when they planned out these walls and they raised up these beams above us. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of all who have worshiped here, those who have celebrated and grieved here, the babies dedicated, the couples married, family members mourned here. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of our children as they learn and laugh together, and our youth as they grow into their own sense of purpose and meaning. It is full of the love of the staff who have served it, full of their hopes for this congregation, their hard work, and their acts of dedication. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of the choir, the love made so clear in the voices lifted here on every Sunday morning. This is the home that love made. It is full of our love, the love of this community, despite our differences, despite our disagreements, the love that holds us together as a people. This is the home that love made. Can you feel this love and the love that will go with us to our new home? It will be the home that love will make. But for now, we are thanking these walls and these beams and this ceiling. It's a home that love made. And we are so very grateful. Go in peace.